Have you ever wondered why, like, a highly funded tech giant can spend $100 million on this massive new software launch that just completely flatlines in a week?
Right, yeah.
But then, a solo developer in their basement builds some rudimentary puzzle game, and suddenly 50 million people are playing it every single morning.
Oh, it happens so often. I mean, it's practically an industry cliche at this point.
It really is.
We constantly make this assumption that, infinite resources, massive engineering teams, and brilliant technical architecture, that those automatically equal success. But human behavior just doesn't operate on a clean, predictable engineering timeline.
Which is exactly what we're dissecting today on the deep dive.
Yeah.
We're extracting the core insights from this really compelling piece of source material. It's called Habit Machine, AI Product Management by behavioral economist Dr. Vladimir Dyatlov.
Right, it's a fascinating read.
Yeah, and our goal today is to pull out what he calls the ultimate operating system for creation. He calls it the build-validate ship loop. And for you listening, whether you're launching a tech startup or maybe leading a massive internal reorg at your company, or you're just intensely curious about how the apps you use manipulate your daily habits, this framework is going to completely rewire how you think about bringing an idea into reality.
Because Dr. Dyatlov brings this very specific, almost surgical perspective to the topic. I mean, he's not a software engineer who just eventually got promoted to management.
Right. Completely different background.
Exactly. His background is in behavioral economics. His entire career has been spent studying how information actually shapes human decision-making.
Right.
And he's used that to scale products to hundreds of millions of users by leaning heavily on behavioral data and AI. His central thesis completely upends the traditional playbook.
Oh, totally.
He argues flat out that products do not win on features. They win on behavior.
And if that's true, if that's actually the case, then practically everything we're taught about writing business plans and product roadmaps is just completely backward.
It is.
We spend all this time obsessing over the feature list, right? Like, does it have dark mode? Does it have cloud sync? Does it integrate with this or that API?
Right, the endless checklist.
Exactly. But before we get into how to build for behavior, we really have to talk about why the old way of building things is failing so spectacularly right now.
Yeah, you're referring to the traditional waterfall method of planning.
Right, exactly. And anyone who has worked in a corporate environment knows this pain. You spend, 3 months writing a massive requirements document, trying to predict every possible thing the user might want. Then the engineering team takes that document, they disappear into a cave for 6 to 9 months, build the entire thing in absolute secrecy, and then boom, you have this massive launch day.
Right.
And you just cross your fingers and pray the market actually wants the thing.
And historically, to be fair, that model had its place.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're building a physical bridge, you absolutely need waterfall planning. You cannot iterate on the structural integrity of a suspension bridge halfway through construction.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Very bad. But in the digital space, or honestly any space dealing with rapid consumer trends, that method is now just catastrophic.
Right, because things move too fast.
Exactly. User behavior and AI capabilities, they are no longer evolving on a yearly or even a monthly basis. They are evolving weekly.
So if your feedback loop takes 9 months to close, you are effectively launching a product for a world that literally does not exist anymore.
Precisely. The core assumption of traditional planning is that you can perfectly predict human behavior in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly expensive delusion.
Wow. An expensive delusion.
Yes, you are spending millions of dollars to build a reality that only actually exists in the spreadsheet.
Right. So to break out of that delusion, Dr. Dyatlov introduces this build-validate ship loop. And reading through the sources, what really struck me is how he treats the major tech philosophies. You have design thinking, lean startup, and agile.
Yes, the big three.
Right. And in the tech world, people tend to treat these like rival religions. Like you have the agile purists arguing with the design thinking evangelists.
Constantly.
But he says that treating them as separate, competing ideologies is exactly why teams fail.
Because used in isolation, they create massive organizational blind spots. If you think about the fundamental purpose of each methodology, design thinking is a framework to ensure you're actually solving the right problem.
Okay, right.
Lean startup is a framework to prove that your proposed solution will actually change user behavior. And then agile is an execution framework to ensure you can deliver that solution reliably while adapting to new information.
So if you're only using Agile, you might have the most efficient engineering team on the planet, perfectly delivering software on time, but you might be efficiently building something that absolutely nobody wants to use.
Exactly. You've just perfected the delivery of weight.
Ouch.
And conversely, if you only use design thinking, you might spend a year mapping out this brilliant, empathetic, psychologically perfect solution on whiteboards, but your team lacks the execution engine to ever actually ship it to the market.
Yeah.
They absolutely have to be an integrated loop.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy. It's really like trying to cross a dense, uncharted jungle.
I like that, yeah.
You wouldn't just hand a team of guys some machetes and say, start paving a road blindly, which is essentially what Agile without direction is.
Right, just chopping wood.
Exactly. You'd probably climb a tall tree first, look at the landscape, and figure out the general direction so you don't end up paving a road straight into a swamp. That's the discovery phase.
Right.
Then you'd send a scout a few hundred yards ahead to make sure that specific path is actually walkable. That's your validation phase. And only then do you bring in the heavy machinery to pave the road, which is delivery.
That is a highly accurate visualization. And honestly, it requires a moment of self-reflection. I mean, for you listening, if you look at the projects you are currently managing or even just participating in, ask yourself, how often are you paving the road before you've verified the destination?
That's a brutal question.
It is. How many times have you committed budget, resources, and months of time to a feature just because a senior executive thought it sounded like a good idea in a meeting, only to realize post-launch that the users needed something entirely different?
Yeah, paving the road to nowhere is a very expensive hobby. So let's stop doing that. Let's look at the very first part of this loop, discovery.
Right. Phase one.
This is rooted in design thinking, which the text refers to as problem mapping. But right out of the gate, we need to redefine what design actually means in this context. Because the common misconception, and I have absolutely been guilty of this, is that design is just decoration.
Right. Making it look pretty.
Yeah, like making the user interface look sleek, choosing the color palette, rounding the corners of the buttons.
And if a team treats design merely as a visual layer applied at the very end of the engineering process, they're simply polishing friction.
Polishing friction, wow.
Yes. They are making a broken process look pretty. True design, in a modern behavioral sense, is service logic. It is the invisible architecture of rules and flows that dictate whether a user feels cognitive relief or cognitive exhaustion when they interact with your system.
And to build that invisible architecture, Dr. Dyachkov talks about managing a very specific psychological rhythm within the team. He calls it the expand-converge rhythm.
This rhythm is where most teams stumble in the discovery phase. You first have to expand your thinking to see all the hidden possibilities and deeply understand the user's pain. Then you have to converge on a single, actionable hypothesis.
But getting the timing right is notoriously difficult, isn't it? Like, when do you switch from expanding to converging?
It's entirely unnatural for most corporate environments. If a team converges too early, which is what usually happens when deadlines are looming, they default to the most obvious familiar solution.
Right.
They just copy a competitor's feature. They ship a boring incremental improvement that doesn't actually shift user behavior at all.
But if they stay in the expansion phase for too long,
Then they suffer from analysis paralysis. They generate thousands of sticky notes, endless theoretical frameworks, and beautiful concept art, but they ship nothing. The discipline of management is regulating that heartbeat between expanding to learn and converging to act.
Okay, so let's break down exactly how to manage that heartbeat. The source material outlines 5 specific stages of problem-first design. Let's say we are a team trying to build an app for busy parents to manage their household schedules.
Good example.
Stage 1 is empathize. And the text makes a critical distinction here. Empathy isn't just feeling sympathy for tired parents, it's about hunting for hidden friction. Because, as the text notes, users are notoriously terrible at articulating their own unmet needs.
Right. There is a massive gulf between a user's stated preference and their revealed behavior. If you run a focus group and ask parents what they want in a scheduling app, they will give you their stated preference.
Sure.
They might say, we want a deeply customizable, color-coded calendar with 50 different tagging options.
Right, because that sounds like it would make them organized. It sounds productive.
Precisely. But if you rely on modern behavioral telemetry, which is where this framework gets really interesting,
Yeah.
you look at the actual data of how they use existing tools. You look at where they hesitate. This is where Dr. Dyachkov introduces the concept of AI-assisted ethnography.
Wait, ethnography? Like like scientists living with uncontacted tribes in the Amazon. What
Uh-huh.
does that mean for an AI software product?
It's the digital equivalent of that deep observational study. So instead of a scientist with a notepad sitting in a jungle, you have AI tools analyzing thousands of session replays.
Oh, I see.
The AI doesn't care about what the user said they wanted. It looks for rage clicks when a user taps a button 5 times in frustration. It looks for cursor thrashing.
Cursor thrashing.
Yeah, when someone is just moving their mouse wildly because they're lost. It looks for moments where the user stares at a screen for 30 seconds, clicks nothing, and then closes the app.
So it's finding the silent frustration, the stuff they don't say in the focus group.
Exactly. The AI clusters these moments of hesitation to reveal the true behavioral tags. So in our hypothetical parent app, the telemetry might reveal that parents never actually use those 50 color-coded tags.
Right.
Instead, the hidden friction is that they spend 4 minutes every morning just trying to figure out who is picking up the kids from soccer. The hidden friction isn't a lack of customization, it's cognitive overload in a moment of panic.
That makes so much sense. So once we use that telemetry to find the real friction, we move to stage 2, define. We have to isolate the real job.
Yes.
The text leans heavily on the jobs to be done framework here, and there is a brutal rule I underlined in my notes. If you cannot define the problem in one single sentence for a non-expert, you haven't defined it.
The Jobs to be Done framework, or JTBD, forces a complete paradigm shift for product teams. Let's stick with the scheduling app. A traditional feature-centric team would define their goal as build a better shared calendar interface.
Which is just a feature request. It doesn't actually solve a human problem.
Correct. A team using jobs to be done would define the goal entirely differently. They would say, the job to be done is to reduce the time it takes a parent to confirm childcare logistics from 4 minutes to 10 seconds without feeling anxious. Do you see the difference?
Oh, it's massive. The
Yeah.
first one anchors the team to a specific piece of software, a calendar.
Right.
The second one anchors the team to the user's emotional state and desired progress. It doesn't even mandate that the solution has to be a calendar.
Exactly. It could be a voice assistant. It could be a simple text message interface. It creates a measurable behavioral threshold.
Right.
You can objectively measure if you reduce the time to 10 seconds and eliminated the anxiety.
Okay, so we've defined the job. Stage 3 is ideate. This is where the expansion rhythm kicks back in. We search for the ideal state.
Right.
And the instruction from the source material is wild here. You are supposed to temporarily, completely ignore technical debt. Forget your budget. Forget your engineering constraints. Just figure out what the absolute best possible experience would look like.
Which sounds totally irresponsible to a traditional project manager, doesn't it?
Completely. They'd be pulling their hair out.
But it is a necessary psychological trick. If you ask a team to brainstorm while actively thinking about their current legacy database and their really tight budget, they will only ever imagine tiny, incremental tweaks to the broken system they already have.
Because they're confined by reality.
Yes, you have to give the human brain permission to design the flawless interaction. You let reality, budget, and engineering constraints negotiate the details later.
So we dream up this flawless, constraint-free interaction. Stage 4 brings it into reality, prototype, make the hypothesis tangible. But we aren't talking about writing massive blocks of code here, are we?
No, not at all. A prototype is a disposable learning device, not a polished artifact. And in the current AI landscape, this phase operates at a speed that was frankly unimaginable even 3 years ago. We're talking about using AI-generated mockups, clickable flows in design software, or even just conversational AI prompts to simulate an interaction.
But how do you know how much effort to put into the prototype? Like, when is it good enough?
You follow the rule of fidelity matching. The fidelity or realism of your prototype should strictly match the risk of the hypothesis you are testing.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Sure. If your hypothesis is, will a user understand this new navigation menu? A static image with invisible clickable hotspots is entirely sufficient. You do not need to spin up a functional database to test the menu.
Right. Which perfectly sets up the final stage of discovery. Test. Measure the behavioral response to the prototype. And again, this goes back to the difference between stated preference and revealed behavior. You don't hand them the prototype and ask, hey, do you like this? You watch to see if they actually accomplish the job, and the text provides a ruthless metric here. If less than 70% of the testers succeed on their very first try, the design fails. Go back to the drawing board.
A 70% failure threshold might seem extreme.
Okay.
It's deeply grounded in cognitive load theory. Human working memory is severely limited. If a user has to guess the meaning of an icon, backtrack through a menu, or hunt for the next logical step.
Yeah.
You are heavily taxing their working memory.
It's like making them do mental math just to use your app.
Precisely. And if 30% of your testers are failing to navigate the flow in a controlled environment where they are actively trying to help you, the friction is far too high for it to ever become an organic habit in the chaotic real world.
Yeah.
You cannot market your way out of a 30% failure rate at the first interaction. Users will simply abandon the product.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
I completely understand the psychological
Ah.
journey. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. But what does this actually mean for the engineers? Like, when I look at a traditional product backlog, it's just a list of technical tasks. Add database integration, build login screen API, update security certificates.
All right.
How on earth does all this empathy and cognitive load stuff translate into actual code on a developer's screen?
This is the exact moment where the methodology usually falls apart in large organizations. A traditional, feature-driven backlog optimizes purely for engineering convenience.
It does.
It reads like a mechanical construction manual. It tells the engineer what to build, but it completely strips away the why. A design thinking backlog, however, optimizes for cognitive relief. It reads like a behavioral contract between the builder and the user.
The text provides a really clear example of this using an AI health triage app, like one of those symptom checkers you use when you're feeling sick. Walk me through the difference there.
In a traditional system, the backlog ticket assigned to the engineer would say, build natural language symptom parser.
Which tells the developer exactly what technology to spin up.
Yes, but it tells them absolutely nothing about the user's psychological state. The user using this tool is likely sick, anxious, and scared.
Very true.
A value-driven ticket for that exact same feature would say, give the user exactly 3 clear action paths so they can decide what to do within 10 seconds.
Wow. Okay. If I'm a developer, I approach that entirely differently.
Completely differently. The first ticket asks the engineer to solve a technical puzzle. How do we build the most accurate parser? This often results in a highly accurate but incredibly confusing medical dashboard that overwhelms the user.
Right, with a million drop-downs and checkboxes.
Exactly. The second ticket asks the engineer to solve a human puzzle. How do we make this medical decision feel instant and safe? It forces the output to be radically simple. The screen can only show 3 buttons: self-care, book a doctor, or go to the ER immediately. That is what designing for cognitive relief looks like at the engineering level.
That makes total sense, but we do need to warn the listener about the major trap of the discovery phase. The source material calls it research without shipping.
Oh, this is a big one.
This is when a team falls so deeply in love with their ideal state and their beautiful prototypes that they just keep doing research loop after research loop. They conduct endless user interviews, they refine the color palette, they debate the typography, and they let their financial runway completely evaporate while they ship absolutely nothing to the real market.
It is a profound failure of rhythm. Research that is never subjected to real-world validation is merely theory. And the market does not reward theoretical elegance. It rewards shipped value.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you have to realize that you have mapped enough of the jungle, and it is time to send out the scout.
Which brings us to the second phase of the loop, validation, or lean startup as behavioral testing. So we've survived discovery. We have our beautiful, validated prototype, but building the full back-end system is going to take 6 months and cost $500,000.
Right.
It's way too risky to just start coding. So we enter the lean validation loop.
This is where idealism meets harsh reality. You have a psychological hypothesis about how to change behavior. Now you have to prove it is actually true as cheaply and rapidly as humanly possible before you commit your most expensive resource, which is engineering time.
And before we go further, we have to address a massive misconception here. Everyone listening to this has probably heard the term MVP, minimum viable product. But the way 90% of the corporate world uses that term is entirely wrong. People treat an MVP as just a cheap, buggy version 1 of the final product. Like, oh, the MVP is clunky, we'll fix the UI in version 2. But Dr. Dyachtov insists that an MVP is not an early version of a product at all. It is strictly a learning instrument.
If you view an MVP as just the first step on a predefined product roadmap, you've entirely missed the philosophy. The sole purpose of an MVP is to isolate your riskiest behavioral hypothesis, deliver just enough of the experience to test that hypothesis, and capture hard behavioral evidence.
And to prevent teams from overbuilding, the text introduces 2 ruthless filters that every single element of an MVP must pass. necessity and sufficiency.
Yes,
Let's debate those because they honestly sound contradictory at first glance.
they act as a counterbalance. The necessity filter asks, is this specific feature absolutely required to test our core hypothesis? Let's say you are testing a new food delivery concept. Is a fully automated real-time GPS tracking map necessary to test if people want the food?
No.
No, therefore you cut it.
But then you have the sufficiency filter.
Right, sufficiency asks, what is the minimum level of quality required to make this scenario believable and viable for the user? If your food delivery app is so bare bones that it crashes every time they try to enter their credit card, the experience breaks.
So you learn nothing.
Exactly. You learn nothing about their desire for the food because they just got frustrated by the bugs. Your MVP must sit perfectly in the tension between those two filters.
And the tools we have today to build these MVPs, I mean, it is mind-blowing how fast this moves now. Teams don't have to wait weeks for full-stack developers to build a testing environment. The sources mention concepts like vibe coding and no-code builders. You can practically dream up a testable surface in the morning and have it live by lunch.
What we're witnessing is AI collapsing the cost of curiosity.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, vibe coding is a fascinating industry term for using AI coding assistants, where you simply describe the application in natural language, and the AI generates the functional front-end interface and the back-end database connections almost instantly.
But is that code actually good enough to launch a real company on? Like, could I build the next Uber with vibe coding?
Usually no. It might not be highly scalable, it might not be production-grade secure code, and it might be wildly inefficient under the hood. But that doesn't matter for an MVP. It is entirely sufficient to put in front of 50 users for 3 days to see if they actually click the buy button.
Right.
It fundamentally changes the economics of validation. You are no longer spending $50,000 to test an idea, you are spending $50 in an afternoon.
So the mechanics of this phase run on the classic cycle: build, measure, learn. First, build. And the rule here is you build to test hypotheses, not features. The book details some incredibly clever formats for MVPs that require almost zero actual engineering. I really want to talk about the fake door test because this is brilliant.
The fake door is arguably the most efficient validation tool in existence.
It's essentially putting up a beautifully designed menu in the window of an empty brick-and-mortar building just to see if anyone actually stops, reads it, and tries to pull the door handle to order food.
Exactly. You are measuring the intent and demand before you build the infrastructure to fulfill it. In a digital product, a fake door might be a pricing page or a start free trial button for a service that doesn't actually exist yet.
Wait, isn't that deceiving the user?
Not if it's handled properly. You run some targeted ads to it. When the user clicks the button, you intercept them with a polite message saying, "We are currently in private beta and at full capacity. Please leave your email for early access."
Ah, okay. And if 1,000 people visit the site and not a single person clicks the button?
Then you have just saved your company 6 months of engineering work, building a product that nobody was willing to pay for.
Wow. Then you have the concierge MVP and the Wizard of Oz MVP. These are fascinating because they feel like a magic trick.
They're designed to simulate the value proposition without the crushing cost of automation. In a concierge MVP, you are highly transparent that a human is doing the work. If you are testing a personalized financial planning app, you don't build the algorithm, you just have a financial planner manually reviewing spreadsheets and emailing the client.
And the Wizard of Oz, how is that different?
The Wizard of Oz MVP hides the human. The front end looks like a highly advanced automated system, but behind the curtain, it is just humans furiously pulling levers. The core philosophy here is simple. If a human doing the work manually cannot deliver enough value to retain the user, then writing $1 million algorithm to do it automatically certainly won't magically fix the value proposition.
Right. Okay, so we've built our fake door, or our Wizard of Oz test. The next step in the cycle is measure. And here is the golden rule repeated throughout the text. Track behavior, not opinions.
Always.
We are not sending out a survey asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, did you like this? We are looking at cold, hard behavioral data. The text highlights activation rate, day 7 retention, and a metric I really want to dig into, time to first value.
Time to first value, or TTFV, is arguably the most critical metric for survival in modern digital products. It measures the exact amount of time it takes from the moment a user starts interacting with your product to the moment they achieve a meaningful, relieving outcome. And the text sets a very aggressive boundary. It must be under 3 minutes.
Okay, I have to push back on this. Under 3 minutes. Come on. If I am buying complex B2B accounting software for a Fortune 500 company, It is going to take me 3 weeks just to upload my legacy data and configure the permissions. Is this 3-minute rule really universal, or is it just for consumer apps like TikTok and Instagram?
It is a fair challenge, but the psychology applies universally, even in enterprise software. The value in B2B software might not be completing the entire accounting migration in 3 minutes,
Right.
but the user must experience a signal of value within that window. If they log into your enterprise software and spend the first 3 minutes staring at a blank, confusing configuration screen with no clear path forward, their motivation decays. Cognitive friction takes over.
They just get exhausted.
Exactly. Even if they are forced to use it by their boss, they will hate it. They will require massive amounts of customer support, and they will churn at the first opportunity. The 3-minute rule is about proving to the brain that the effort will be worth the reward.
So you have to give them a quick win, no matter how complex the system is.
Yes, show them a beautiful dashboard populated with sample data immediately so they understand what they are working toward.
Okay, that clarifies it. So we measure the behavior. The final step of the lean loop is learn. The data is in, and it forces a decision. And the framework only allows for 3 valid outcomes: pivot, iterate, or scale.
There is no room for vanity metrics here. If your day 7 retention is near 0, meaning nobody came back after a week, your core hypothesis has failed, you pivot. You radically change direction.
Makes sense.
If the retention is decent, but the time to first value is too high, you iterate. You refine the onboarding, remove some friction, and run the test again.
And if it actually works, like if the data is great.
If the behavior stabilizes and users are pulling the product out of your hands organically, then and only then do you scale.
Okay, let's ground this whole validation phase with our AI health triage app example. From our discovery phase, our ideal constraint-free vision is this highly advanced voice-activated medical AI that seamlessly integrates with the secure databases of every hospital in the country.
A massive undertaking.
Exactly. How do we brutally apply the MVP filters to test that without spending $10 million?
We strip away all the heavy infrastructure. The core hypothesis we need to validate is simply, will users actually trust a digital interface to tell them whether their symptoms require a doctor? To test that, we do not need to build a custom proprietary natural language processor. We just plug in a standard off-the-shelf voice-to-text API from Google or OpenAI.
Right, cheap and immediate.
Yes. And instead of writing a wildly complex predictive AI for the medical triage itself, we use highly constrained, simple rules-based logic for the MVP. If the text string contains chest pain or shortness of breath, the rule immediately out, go to ER.
And for the hospital integration.
We don't build secure data pipes. We put a manual book appointment button on the screen. When the user clicks it, it sends a Slack message to someone on our team who picks up a telephone, calls the clinic, and books the appointment manually.
A perfect Wizard of Oz MVP.
Exactly. You're validating the human interaction model and establishing whether the trust exists entirely before you invest the millions required to build the automated infrastructure.
It forces you to prove that the dog will actually eat the dog food before you invest in building the dog food factory.
That's a great way to put it.
All right, so we've mapped the true problem. We've validated through cheap testing that people actually want the solution. Now we arrive at phase 3, delivery. We actually have to build the factory. How do we execute this without the project descending into total chaos?
This is where Agile transitions from being a buzzword into being an engine for repeatable execution. And we really need to clarify what Agile actually accomplishes. Dr. Dotskov makes a brilliant point. Agile did not invent new ways of working, nor did it eliminate classical management duties like planning, organizing, and controlling quality.
It just compressed them.
It compressed them violently. Instead of planning for an entire year and executing for an entire year, Agile compresses that entire management cycle into a 2-week window called a sprint. You plan, execute, review, and adapt every 14 days.
And that forces a rhythm.
Exactly. This forced compression forces teams to confront reality continuously, rather than hiding behind a massive theoretical project plan that is secretly 6 months behind schedule.
Let's break down that 2-week cycle, because the text outlines the 4-ceremony feedback loop, and it's all about executing with extreme discipline, not just having meetings for the sake of meetings.
Right.
Ceremony 1 is sprint planning. And the text says the goal here is, and I love this, negotiating reality, not optimism. I have to laugh at that because I feel like every project planning meeting I've ever sat in has been 90% blind optimism. Oh yeah, we can build that in a weekend.
It is a deeply ingrained human trait to underestimate complexity. It's known as the planning fallacy. But in a mature Agile system, the planning ceremony is a strict negotiation. And crucially, teams must pull priority items from the backlog that directly impact a behavioral metric.
Not just a technical task.
Right. They are not committing to reskin the settings page to make it blue. That is a status update. They are committing to reduce the time it takes a user to reset their password by 50%. The output of this meeting must be a negotiated commitment grounded in the actual historical bandwidth of the team, aiming at a behavioral outcome.
Okay, ceremony 2 is sprint execution. This is the actual day-to-day doing of the work. The philosophy here is autonomy over micromanagement, relying on daily syncs, the stand-ups to unblock value. And there is a quote in the source material that I absolutely love. I think every manager needs it tattooed on their arm. Silence is the most expensive bug.
It is a profound operational truth. Think about the psychology of a developer. If an engineer gets stuck on a complex problem on Tuesday morning, pride and fear often dictate that they put their head down and try to brute force a solution.
Oh yeah, I can figure this out. Just give me another hour.
Exactly. If they stay silent about being stuck until the review meeting on Friday, they have essentially burned 4 days of the team's capacity.
Because they didn't want to look incompetent.
Exactly. The daily sync is not a status report for the manager to check up on people. It is a diagnostic tool for the team to expose friction instantly. If you are leading a team where people are afraid to say, I am stuck and I need help, your Agile process is fundamentally broken.
No matter what software you're using.
It does not matter what expensive software you use to track your tickets. Culture eats process.
So true. Which leads to ceremony 3 at the end of the 2 weeks, sprint review. And the rule is validating behavior, not features. The text makes it aggressively clear that this is not a dog and pony show to impress the executives.
If your sprint review consists of a developer clicking through a test environment saying, look, the button works now, you are executing theater, a true sprint review is a checkpoint against reality.
Okay, so what does that look like?
You deployed the new password reset flow on Wednesday. It is now Friday. You look at the live telemetry. Did the completion rate actually go up? Did the volume of password-related support tickets go down? If you are simply demonstrating that the code compiles, but you cannot prove it changed user behavior, you are confusing motion with momentum.
That brings us to the final ceremony, number 4, sprint retrospective. This is about improving the machine itself, fixing the process by implementing one concrete improvement for the next sprint. And the rule is no blame, just operational hygiene.
The retrospective is what makes Agile a self-healing system. Let's say a major deployment failed, or a feature took 3 times longer than estimated. The retrospective does not ask who screwed up. It asks why the system allowed the failure to occur.
Right.
Was the requirement unclear? Did the testing environment lack the right data? And the golden rule here is to find just one systemic fix to implement in the next sprint.
Just one. Why not fix everything that went wrong? Like if 5 things broke, fix all 5.
Because if you try to mandate 10 process changes at once, the team will experience process fatigue and ignore all of them. Continuous incremental improvement, one fixed bottleneck every 2 weeks, is what compounds into massive velocity over time.
Speaking of velocity, this is a massive point of friction I see everywhere. Teams treat their velocity like the number of story points or tasks they burn down in a sprint, like a high score in an arcade game. Management is always pushing to increase velocity. Are we really just trying to force developers to type faster and code harder every 2 weeks?
That is perhaps the single most destructive trap in modern software development. Treating velocity as a scoreboard completely misses the point. Velocity is a diagnostic tool. It measures a team's stable capacity, not their inherent worth.
So what happens when management uses it as a weapon to demand more output?
The teams adapt to survive. They simply start inflating their estimates. A task that used to be a 3-point task magically becomes a 5-point task. The aggregate numbers go up, management is happy, but the actual value delivered stays exactly the same.
Wow.
Or worse, it drops, because the developers cut corners on quality and introduce technical debt just to hit the artificial target.
It's literally just inflation for story points. The currency becomes worthless.
Exactly. Overloading a sprint to look productive breaks the rhythm of the loop. And this actually touches on a deeper concept in the text regarding Agile as organizational design. There was a famous axiom called Conway's Law.
Let's dive into that because the text mentions it, but I really want to understand the mechanics.
Conway's Law states that organizations inevitably design systems that mirror their own internal communication structures.
Wait, really? So the org chart dictates the product?
Yes. If your internal company process is highly opaque, deeply bureaucratic, and requires 5 distinct levels of managerial approval just to change the color of a button on the website, the digital product you ship to your customers will feel exactly the same.
That's crazy.
It's true, though. The user interface will feel heavy, slow, confusing, and bureaucratic.
Whoa, so you're saying that if you want to build a seamless, frictionless, magical product for your user, you have to build a seamless, frictionless team environment first.
Precisely. You cannot ship simplicity to the market if your internal operating model is chaos and friction. The product is always a reflection of the team that built it.
That is a phenomenal takeaway, which leads us perfectly into the final section of our depth dive today, operating the loop. Because having these 3 distinct phases, mapping the problem in discovery, testing it in validation, and building it in delivery is great in theory. But the actual magic, the connective tissue, is how you run them simultaneously.
And that requires a fundamental shift in leadership mindset, moving away from ritual and toward rhythm. Rituals are meetings you hold simply because the calendar says it's Tuesday. Rhythm is a continuous, overlapping heartbeat of learning from the market and shipping value to the market. Dr. Dashkov emphasizes that bureaucracy will kill this loop instantly, but strict discipline sustains it.
Let's get into the specific cadences, because this is where the theory hits reality. Let's look at discovery. It has to run continuously, right? It can't just be a quarterly offsite retreat where the executives rent a hotel conference room, stare at whiteboards for 2 days, and declare what the users want.
No, that is traditional waterfall disguised as strategy. In this operating system, discovery is a continuous intake valve. It is fueled daily by reading support tickets, reviewing the behavioral telemetry from the app, and monitoring market signals. The design team is always expanding and converging on new problems week in and week out.
And validation. This is a hard rule.
And
Validation has to happen before engineering ever commits to writing production code.
Always. If your engineering team is writing production-grade back-end architecture for a hypothesis that has not survived a fake door test or a concierge MVP, you are no longer managing a product. You are gambling with company money.
And finally, delivery is churning along, shipping those validated improvements in weekly or bi-weekly increments, tightly tied to the behavioral metrics we defined early on. So you essentially have these 3 gears turning at different speeds, but they are inextricably linked.
Right.
And inevitably, things are going to break. Validation will fail or engineering will hit a wall. There's a golden rule of leadership in the text for when that happens. Cut scope, not cadence.
This is where true leadership is tested. Maintaining the rhythm of the loop is infinitely more important than delivering a specific promised feature. Let's say your validation test on a major new initiative fails spectacularly on a Tuesday. The traditional executive reaction is to panic, ignore the data, and force the engineering team to build it anyway just so they have something to announce at the Friday all-hands meeting.
Right, because they promised the board a new feature.
Exactly. But in this system, if validation fails, you immediately pause delivery on that feature. You send the team back to discovery to figure out why it failed.
And what if they don't have anything else to build?
If discovery stalls and you don't have a big feature ready, you do not pause the engineering sprint. You have them ship a smaller, safer improvement, maybe fixing technical debt or speeding up load times. You never, ever break the heartbeat of the loop because the loop is the only thing generating your evidence.
So, for you listening to this right now, whether you are leading a massive software division, building a physical product in a garage, or just trying to organize a complex community initiative, you have to ask yourself some really uncomfortable questions based on this framework. Are you executing corporate theater, or are you actually measuring a shift in human behavior?
Right?
Are you building what you want to build because it sounds cool in a meeting? Or are you building what the harsh behavioral data proves that people actually need?
It is a deeply humbling shift in perspective. It forces creators to admit that our intuition, no matter how experienced we are, is very often wrong, and that the only truth that actually matters in product creation is revealed behavior.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've covered incredible ground today. We started by tearing down the delusion of the old waterfall method, and then we unpacked the ultimate operating system, the build-validate ship loop. And what we've learned is that it's not a rigid set of rules. It's an engine designed to systematically replace our own internal guesswork with external behavioral evidence.
We moved from mapping the true psychological problem in discovery, hunting for the hidden friction, rather than just piling on features, then to validation, ruthlessly testing our hypotheses as cheaply as possible to prove demand before we build. And finally, to delivery, using the compression of Agile to ship reliably, continuously capturing telemetry to feed right back into the discovery phase.
It is literally an engine for generating reality. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final profound concept from Dr. Dyachkov's work for you to explore on your own. We haven't touched on this yet, but it's a phenomenon he calls behavioral mutation.
Ah, yes. This is perhaps the most fascinating and unpredictable aspect of creating anything. You can execute this loop flawlessly, you can have empathetic discovery, mathematically rigorous validation, and beautifully disciplined delivery. But once a product reaches the open market, it enters a chaotic dynamic system. And sometimes, despite all your planning, the product mutates into an entirely unexpected institution.
Can you give an example of that?
The classic modern example is video conferencing software like Zoom or Teams. They were meticulously mapped, validated, and built specifically for corporate boardrooms and enterprise sales calls. That was the validated hypothesis.
Right.
But the market got hold of the product and mutated the behavior. Those exact same tools, with no change to the code, suddenly became the fundamental infrastructure for distributed creator communities, global online education, remote yoga classes, and virtual social lives. The users hack the product to solve a psychological job that the creators never, ever originally intended.
Wow. So if the market can just hijack your product and use it for something else entirely, what does that mean for the listener who's pouring their heart into building something right now?
It leaves us with this thought to ponder: you do not ultimately dictate the future of your creations. The market does. Your only job as a creator is to build a feedback loop fast enough and sensitive enough to listen to what the market is trying to tell you when it inevitably mutates your idea into something even better.
You do not dictate the future. The market does. I absolutely love that. And it brings us right back to where we started today. Building something new isn't a clean, straight line from a brilliant idea to massive success. It is a murky, chaotic, repeating loop. But if you run that loop fast enough and listen closely enough, you just might pave a road to a destination that actually matters. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take this operating system, apply it to whatever you are building today, and start replacing your guesswork with evidence. We will catch you on the next one.